You know that feeling when you're pretty sure you're on the right track, but something just feels a little bit off and it makes you question the entire project and you're not really sure if you should continue doing it, if you should stop and reassess what your goals are and how you're approaching it. I was dealing with some of that with this podcast, Build a Better Wellness Biz, up until this week, but I actually had a pretty big, major breakthrough when it comes to that, and I'm really excited to share that, as well as the rest of the updates on what I've been up to in this week's episode of Podcast Launch Diaries. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to week 4 of Podcast Launch Diaries. There are 6 weeks or so left to until the launch date, which has still not been set officially, and I didn't actually check how many weeks were left before I started this video. I think it's 6, so we're going to go with 6. This is definitely week 4 of this series documenting the launch of my new podcast, Build a Better Wellness Biz. And I'm excited to have you here to dive into the updates of what I've been working through in the past week. If you remember last week, episode 3, I had a bit of a rough one in terms of productivity and only got a couple hours done working towards the podcast, and did get some important things done, did get a couple interviews done that week that I was happy with, but overall a lot of the big picture things are still outstanding. So I was excited to dive back in with a much more productive week this week. I know that if you are currently launching a show, if you're already producing an active show, you know all about how the time demands of podcasting often conflict with everything else that we've got going on in our lives, be it work, family, friends, social life, kids. There are so many things that are pulling at our time, and podcasting eats up a lot of it. So I am feeling really grateful that I've had some big chunks of time over the past few weeks. Last week, not so much, but around that, these other three out of 4 of the first 3 weeks, I've been able to get through quite a bit of stuff. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. It's great to get back on a productive kind of, have a productive week this week. So let's dive into some of the updates. And I want to share, like I said in the intro, a bit about a breakthrough that I had. So we're going to get to that in a second. But first, let's look at the time updates here. So you can see last week, 6 hours, not nearly as much as I would have liked, and probably 3 of those were doing interviews. So not much work on the podcast itself. It was more kind of in the podcast, so to speak. But this week, tripled that time up to 18 hours, and I'm a little bit embarrassed about where some of that time went. I'm happy with the results, but that one is my one-sheet creation. I don't know how much time I have put into this, creating this one-sheet, and I'm super excited about it, but there were definitely more important things that I could have been working on than that, and I won't hold you in suspense any longer. Let's just get right to it, and I'll show you the finished result here. So here we have my one sheet. So this is basically for using when I'm pitching other shows to guest on and to help people get to know a little bit about me. So here you can see we've got some pictures showing off some personality, and I've got some copy just general about me. I've got a short welcome video here. It's not really a welcome video, it's an about me video. It's kind of like a 2-minute version of my life story. Here are some things that topics that we can talk about on the podcast when I'm pitching them, and things to avoid: Star Wars, ice cream, long distance bicycle touring, the 2006 Edmonton Oilers Stanley Cup playoff run, and audio nerdery. You get me going on these things and I might never shut up, so we're not going to get into them now. Here I've got episode titles to potentially title their episodes on any of those topics above. Here I just kind of explain that, I know what I'm doing when it comes to audio, so the audio quality is going to be good. And basically this whole page is just, selling myself. And I know that I've gone through this a little bit before, but I did make some updates here. As podcasters, we all know how difficult it can be to get people to promote their episodes when they're on as a guest. So putting that up front, I think, helps. Here's a link to headshots, so they can just grab those immediately from there. That's often frustrating, having to hunt people down and get those headshots. And then my bio as well. That's also annoying oftentimes to collect that. Just a little bit of my favorite things about me, and some of the places that I've been featured, other shows, conferences, virtual summits, that type of thing. And then down here, just a kind of call to action there. So that is the finished version of my one sheet. I am really excited about how it turned out, and I can't wait to actually start sending this out to people, which probably in the next week or 2 will become a reality. So that was a big chunk of time went into that. That was mostly on the weekend. So I'm kind of letting myself off the hook for putting that much time into it because it was on the weekend and I was having fun doing it. The other big time, the big time investment, I should say, about 3 hours, was putting together this guest info survey. And so one of the things that I want to do with this show is have the guests on, do the interview, but then get a bunch of different information, more kind of technical, granular stuff about how they run their businesses on a forum, a survey, and have that stuff on the show notes. And so I'm kind of thinking, we'll see how this works. We'll see if guests will even fill this out because it will take a bit of time. And that may not always happen. But my goal here is to have this information on the website, which is going to incentivize people actually going back to my website and to see that information, where it's going to be more stuff about the tools they use to grow their business, their monthly revenue. Everybody loves knowing the numbers, so that's not going to be on the podcast. That's going to be on the website. And so there's going to be kind of two different pieces of content. And this is something that I tell people all the time is you want to circulate people around your content ecosystem. And to do that, you really need to create unique content for each platform that is best suited for that platform. So I don't like giving everything away on the podcast and then, just replicating that on the website and on, YouTube or whatever that is. I'm not going to be posting my podcast on YouTube. I'm going to be pulling out video clips. We're going to get into a bit more of this in a second about how I've developed my content repurposing kind of plan for the podcast. But I want to make sure that each piece of content that I'm putting out there is actually designed for the platform that it's going to be going on. So that is one tip that I would give you as well. If you are creating content of any kind, make it for the platform it's on, and don't just repurpose it wholesale. Kind of pull out bits that fit natively onto other platforms. So we'll get to that content repurposing plan in a second. But this guest survey that I had, so this took a bunch of time to create and to come up with the questions and format and all that kind of stuff. And so basically this is just a long Airtable form here that I'll send to guests, and just collecting a bunch of information about their businesses and about them personally. And then I will feature them on the website, and we'll see, like I said, we'll see how this goes. We'll see if people fill this out. I'm going to start sending it out to past guests as well as upcoming guests in the next week or so. So potentially by next week, I'll have an update for you on how well this is all working. And then I also actually have one. So there's going to be two types of guests basically on the show. There's going to be people who are business owners, wellness business owners. And so I think that that's going to be really important information for the average listener who is curious about what other wellness business owners are doing to succeed in marketing their businesses and growing their businesses and all that kind of stuff. Everybody kind of likes to, know what's working for other people, what's not working for other people. And then the other type of guest is a person like a service provider who works with wellness business owners. So these might be people who help with marketing. I've interviewed somebody who does virtual summits, puts them on, somebody who does PR. And I've got a bunch of other people who are kind of service providers that work with business owners. So they're going to fill out a different form, and then I'm going to list them in a service provider site on the website, or a different section of the website there. And so that there will be kind of a resource guide for listeners. If you're looking to do a certain thing, we've got these pre-approved kind of vetted people who you can go to there. So I'm hoping that those work out really well. And we'll see how they go. Like I said, I'll update you on if people are filling these out and what kind of information I'm getting. They are a little bit long, so I'm a bit concerned about that, but I'm hoping that they see the value in them as much as I do. And I think that once there are a few of them up there, it'll be easier to get more people to participate in that. So those are some of the updates where I spent a lot of the time this week. The big chunks there. I also did one interview here. You can see a bunch of time went into that. And then I was prepping for another interview as well that actually got postponed until a couple weeks from now. Let's see what else we got. We got the podcast launch diaries, editing, recording, all that kind of stuff, which I did last week, which I'm kind of including in this. It is kind of part of this Build a Better Wellness Biz promotion kind of plan for the launch. Launch sheet creation, launch plan, brainstorming. I don't know what the 17 minutes was because I didn't really do much of that. But let's jump over to Asana and see what other updates we have here. So interview research and prep, got that done. I did reach out to a bunch of potential collaborators. So these are people who I think I mentioned last week are people who are in a have similar shows to mine basically, and there's a lot of potential for crossover, and they offer very different products and services than I do. And so that makes it a really great kind of potential collaboration opportunity where we're not really competing for customers. We can actually both serve the same people, and we have similar shows, so probably similar people are going to be listening to our stuff, and we can kind of help each other out and grow, at least is the plan. So I've got some positive responses back from that, which is exciting. It's always, when you're first starting out and you don't have an audience, or at least a smaller audience compared to some of the people you're reaching out to, you can kind of feel like, nobody's going to pay me any attention because, I'm just starting out, and why would they, want to share their audience with me? And I think that a lot of times we feel really protective of our own audiences when we're starting out because they're so small, and we don't want our few people we have to leave us. But I think that the further you get into audience building, the more you realize that it really is, everybody wins by collaborating, and that it pays to be kind of generous with your time and attention and your audience as well, in pointing them to resources that are actually going to help them and might offer a different perspective and tone than what you are offering them. And if you're anything like me, when you are listening to podcasts on a specific topic, I will download like every podcast out there. I'll listen to 5 different shows and binge through all of them to find out what information I like best and what hosts I like best and what's most helpful. So it's not really a zero-sum game when it comes to kind of the competition versus collaboration side of things. So I mentioned the content repurposing outline here. And so this, I have really embraced my visual learner and kind of side of things of my personality here in going into these lucid charts for everything recently. And so part of what I was wanting to do with this is seeing who on my team I was going to need to utilize, or who I might need to add to the team in order to create all the promotional micro content that I wanted to for the show. And so here we have me up here, and so I'm going to record the episode. We can actually zoom in here a bit more. And so from the main episode is going to be a summary video, which I'm just going to record right after the interview. I'm going to post about the interview on social right after I'm done with that. And this is kind of also a timeline. The timeline moves down going as we get further out. And then there's also going to be a teaser video that I'm going to also record right after recording the episode. So these things I'm all going to record. And these, like the summary video and the teaser video, those are separate videos that they're not coming from the podcast. I'm recording them separately, specifically for video. And so those are going to be just a recap. So this is going to go out after the episode goes live, and this teaser video is going to go out before the episode goes live, teasing what's to come. And so this one will be more my insight and takeaways and perspective on what we talked about during the episode. And this one will be more teasing what the guest has to say and what we talked about in the episode. And then when it comes to posting about the interview on social, one of the things that I got done, it was on my list to build out some of the visual assets further. So I did create some of these graphics just after the episode it finishes recording. Then I'm just going to go on and post, this saying, hey, I just got to chat with Cher all about PR and how you can use that to explode your visibility and authority. And I'm really excited for you to be able to listen to this when it comes out. But, here's just a tease, and I'll give a bit more in the caption about what we talked about. So I did build out those a bit, and that's going to be those pieces. And so after that, I'll upload the episode to Google Drive, from which the video editor, I don't have one yet, but we'll need to look for one, or more likely I'll be doing this to start out at least. We'll cut out some videos from the episode, and those are just going to be short, like 3 to 5 minute kind of clips. And I've actually baked some of those questions that will be the videos right into the interview, and they won't actually appear in the actual audio podcast. They're just for video, but I've incorporated them into the interview kind of process. And so I'll edit the episode, and once the finished episode is done, it'll go to the show notes writer, who will create the blog post, and all these bits will come out of that blog post. Once those are done, that's going to go over to the social media assistant, who is also getting the finished video clips. This person I do not have, so will likely be me at the start. At some point, I do want to bring someone on for sure, or more likely train someone who's already on my team to do that, who has an interest in that. And so from there, we use a service called Design Pickle at the agency. And so that's basically unlimited graphic design for, I think it's like $400 a month. And so it makes a lot of sense for us when we use it for our clients, and we can then kind of use it for free internally. They're a bit expensive for if you're just doing your show on your own. You could probably get someone cheaper than that doing graphic design type stuff for you, depending on how much you're doing. But if you are doing a lot, Design Pickle is a really great solution for that. And so basically, this person, the social media assistant, will send everything to Design Pickle. They'll create all these graphics and then send them back to the social media assistant, who will then schedule them on whatever platform. I haven't decided on that yet. And then some of this stuff will go over to the VA, who will set up the post on the podcast host on the website and all that kind of stuff. So that's the overall plan. And I know that that's a bit confusing a little bit to look at it, but I know if you're a visual person like me who needs to see this stuff all mapped out, it's probably really pleasing. And it definitely is for me. So that was, I feel like mapping this out on paper, or digital paper, so to speak, really helped me get clear on like, okay, this is who I need. This is what I'm going to be creating. This is the timeline for it all. So now I feel more confident in, once I'm finished editing the episodes, how everything else is going to come together to create that content. So I'm going to be getting into the editing, I would say probably not next week, but maybe the week after. So stay tuned for updates on that. So that was exciting to get through as well. I also created a overall marketing map for the business. And so basically down here, this is my owned audiences. So these are things like content. So my daily blog, this podcast launch diaries. I don't know if I'm going to continue this after the launch is done. Right now I'm kind of thinking I will, but this is a lot of content to put out. Then I will have the podcast, which will be weekly, as will the YouTube channel, and then also my weekly newsletter. So these are kind of my owned audiences. Then there's a couple communities. So I have the my podcast Facebook group, and I'm going to start another one for more in line with this this new podcast. So those are all my owned audiences, and then all this stuff is how I'm actually getting people to the owned audiences. So I think a lot of people start producing content and as a way to build their audience, but you still need to like market your marketing in a sense. And so these are all strategies to get people back to my own content and help them find the podcast, find the blog, find the YouTube channel, find the newsletter, all that kind of stuff, find the Facebook groups. And so here we have podcast guesting, publications and media, and advertising over here, different types of advertising. And so these, the color coding here is, these are things, the blues that I'm going to get into fairly soon. And like I mentioned, I'm going to start doing some of that outreach to be on other shows probably next week or the week after. And then the rest of this stuff is longer term, no definitive timeline for that, but things that eventually will be phased into the overall marketing. So that is kind of the overall marketing plan. Not sure if that's useful to anyone who is watching this, but again, I'm having fun nerding out over all these charts. So if you're in the same boat, you'll probably enjoy that. All right. So I finished the one sheet. So that's kind of the stuff we talked about. So these are the other things that I did not get through. Develop the audio branding, including theme music. So this I kind of started on. I got in touch with a composer who is going to write music for the show. And I'm actually today expecting to hear back from him, today or tomorrow. And I know that I had mentioned I'd give an update on the price. He said he would do a kind of podcast package for $300, which I thought was a pretty solid deal. I think that's actually 300 Canadian dollars. So if you're in the US, that's an even better deal, depending on what the currency exchange rate is. So I'm excited to hear back what that is. I gave him some guidance and some keywords that I wanted associated with the show. I sent him some of the visualization, the website, all that kind of thing, and a little bit about the audience and the content of the show. And that was apparently enough for him to go on. I've heard he came recommended to me. So I'm excited to hear the music. I'm also a little bit nervous to see what it'll be like and how well it aligns with, what I have in mind for the vibe of the show. But by next week, I should have an update for you on that. Like I said, building out the visual assets, I did build out those one post for social media, but I did not get through any more of that. So that's being bumped over to next week. Likewise with the map out the lead magnet, I did not get any work done on that. So I'm hoping for more on that next week as well. So let's look at some more of the updates here that we have. So this is the big one here, and so let's get to that later because we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. But we talked about the surveys. We talked about the marketing visualization, the content repurposing plan. So this is something interesting about the interview prep. So I had an interview with Cher Hale, and we talked about PR and how that can be a useful tool for growing your business, and at what stage you should start looking into that, how much it costs, all those types of things. It was a really fantastic interview. But one of the things that I'm realizing is that I've done 4 interviews now, and I've been really happy with all of them, but I think that I'm wanting to put more time into the research side of things, where I'm feeling like I've been doing 2 to 3 hours of research per guest, and these early guests I've had some experience with. I've had a call with them before, or their clients, or things like that, so I'm pretty familiar with them and haven't needed as much prep. But I know the couple that I have been less familiar with, I'm kind of realizing I would have liked to feel a bit more confident in getting into some different topics and taking the interview, having a bit more control over where it went. Because I had my outline, my plan that I shared last week, which was good, but some of the times there were some instances where I was like, I wish I knew a bit more about this, that we could dive into that more, but I don't know what to ask. So I reached out to a podcast host, Jay Klaus. His show is called Creative Elements. He has actually another show called Upside, I believe, which is about, that one's about investing outside of Silicon Valley, and the other one, Creative Elements, is about making a living as a creative. And he runs a community called Freelancing School that I'm a member of. And so I really love his podcast. I've only listened to Creative Elements, I haven't listened to Upside, but he is a fantastic interviewer. And so I was talking to him this week about what his process is. And he said he usually spends like 5 or 6 hours per guest, listening to other shows that they've been on, reading their books, diving deep into their content, all that kind of stuff, which is a big time commitment per guest, but I'm really realizing the value in that as I'm doing these interviews, and really as someone who runs a podcast production agency, I really want this to be as highly produced as possible and as professional as possible. So I want to make sure that these interviews are really some of the better interviews that the guests have been on, and also that listeners are listening to. So I'm realizing that for me, that is a necessity in spending some more time in doing the prep and the research for each guest. So that's something that I'm going to be committing more time to going forward. And it's a bit challenging right now, where I do have a lot of, I think next Wednesday I have 3 interviews all in one day, and I might have one on Tuesday as well. So there's a lot to prep for, and these ones are all with people I know, so that makes it a little bit easier, but I'm going to really need to get further ahead. Right now I'm kind of like prepping 1 week in advance, and I think I want to start getting 2-3 weeks in advance, at least having an outline of the episode on hand. And what I find a lot of the times is, once you have that outline, then your brain just starts working subconsciously, and you'll think of more questions and more ways to take it in that time between then and the interview. So you can kind of keep updating that outline to ensure that it's really the most robust kind of prep document possible. So wanted to share that update with you as well. And then the last thing here, that was the big kind of update for this week, and this was as I was prepping for the interview with Cher. And so a big part of her business is she does PR, but she specifically works with people who are often underrepresented in the media. So a lot of that is LGBTQIA+ people, people of color, who may not see a lot of people like them in the media. And that's something that I really love about her story. And she got into this as a result of she's Black Taiwanese American. And so she did not grow up seeing a lot of people like her in the media. And so as she came into this role as a PR person, she realized that she had this knowledge set to actually help people who might not get the same chances as someone like me to get featured in the media. And so I love this focus on really living her values and using her business as a way to promote broader social change. And so we talked a lot about that in the interview. And as I was prepping for this and researching more about her business, that kind of topic of using your business for good beyond the actual service or product that you deliver is something that I really, really care about and love talking about and want to get to know more about as well, so that we can do that better at Counterweight Creative. And it kind of clicked for me where I was creating this podcast and I wasn't quite sure exactly on the ideal audience member. Like, I was pretty close, but something just felt a little bit off that I couldn't place. And around the content as well, I was like, it feels like it's almost there, but it's missing this piece. And I realized as I was doing this research that this was the piece that was missing, where it was, I definitely want to attract people who have this kind of imperative to do good with their businesses and create change outside of the actual work they do, as well as with the work they do. And so getting clear on that, it just kind of like clicked into place. I was like, oh yes, this needs to be a through line in all the podcasts. Maybe not every single episode, but at least most of them. And I think I will ask most guests for, how they think about these issues and like, what is our responsibility as business owners or content creators or whatever that might be to be engaged in society and have a voice and take action to promote the changes that we want to see made in the world. And so that's something that I'm feeling much more clear on now. And once I thought about that, everything just kind of locked into place, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, everything is now kind of pointed north in alignment with the compass needle there. So I'm excited about that. And I think that a lot of times, like I've felt that feeling so many times in the past where I've probably started like 3-4 podcasts that never actually got launched, but because something always felt off, it wasn't in alignment. And so I think instead of forcing myself through that, a lot of times I thought, okay, if I'm not excited about this now before it's even launched, I'm not going to be excited about it, 20 episodes in, 50 episodes in, 100 episodes in, most likely. Maybe in some of those cases I would have been, but I feel for me, it's really important to feel that alignment and to feel that like pull rather than having to push on whatever the project is that I'm working on. And so being pulled through it because I'm excited about it and because I believe in it and care about it and think that other people will as well. That's really important for me. And I think probably a lot of you can relate to that as well with the projects that you're working on. And I know I talk to a lot of podcasters who don't feel that pull anymore. They might have used to, but now it just feels like this chore, this slog in putting the podcast out every week, in creating all the content and marketing it and not getting the results. And I talk a lot about this on my blog, all those types of things. So definitely check that out if you are looking for more content on, what to do when your show isn't resonating, you're not building an audience, you're feeling stuck, all that kind of stuff. And so you can check that out at counterweightcreative.co/blog. And I write a daily blog post on weekdays. So you can check that out. There's lots of stuff in the back catalog to go through there if you're feeling like you're struggling with that. But I just wanted to share that update for me because I was a little bit worried about that. And in the back of my mind, I was almost like, am I going down this road again where like I'm not excited about it, and am I going to just like offload this project because it doesn't feel in alignment? And this week it kind of clicked into place. And so now I'm like really fully excited about it and ready to get this out into the world at the end of August. So I think that is it for this update. Actually, I'll share a couple of my goals for next week. Like I talked about with the music, I hope to have an update for you on that. Also, mapping out the lead magnet, that's a carryover from this week. I want to follow up with collaborators who I initially reached out to this week, as well as guests who I haven't heard back from in a while. The audio assets, the music, that kind of stuff. Like I said, build up more visual assets. I think this has been 2 weeks already on the list of things to do. So hopefully next week I get into a bit more of that. Next week's a short week too. I'm taking Monday off. So we'll see how this all goes, but and then start doing networking outreach. And so what this is going to look like, I'll give you a much more detailed breakdown next week, but I'm essentially going to be looking in Facebook groups and communities where there are wellness business owners and just starting to reach out and send a friend request and just start up a conversation, LinkedIn as well, and say like, hey, I'm starting this thing, I'm curious, what are you currently struggling with in your business that I should bring someone on to talk about, and so that I can help get them to build out that content for me, basically. And I already have, like I've shared in a previous episode, an absolutely massive list of episode topics already lined up. I think there's like 150 or 200 or something like that. So I have no shortage of content ideas, but I know there is stuff that I'm missing. And so I'm excited to start reaching out to more people, starting those conversations, getting content ideas, but also starting to get them familiar with me and hopefully engaged at some level with what I'm creating with this podcast, because my goal is that it's going to be a really, really valuable resource for them. And so I want to be able to share it with them when it goes live. And, it's also beneficial to me to have people engaged early so that we can have a more successful launch. So that's going to be some of the goals for next week. Like always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments of this video, and I will be sure to address those either there or in an upcoming video. If there's anything that you would like to see that would be helpful with your own launch or improving your own podcast or whatever that is, please let me know. And again, I will address that in an upcoming video or a comment, feel free to send me an email as well, and I'll be happy to chat. So that's it for this week. Until next week, have a good one. See ya.